In honor of National Nutrition Month and RD Day, Joey and I, as registered dietitian slash nutritionist, we are going to answer some questions and share some of our stories and experiences on how we became registered dietitians.
So Marni, tell me a little bit about how you become a registered dietitian.
Yeah, it's feels like so long ago, but not so much. I had just finished with my Master of Science in Exercise Physiology, so I had my degree, a master degree, and I really wanted to pursue more nutrition because I had just gotten into endurance sports and triathlons and marathon running, and I really wanted to do something more with nutrition, and I thought that my master degree would provide me with opportunities to speak and write things that I was very passionate about. And I started approaching companies and magazines and different corporations to try to speak and write for them, but I realized that my master degree would only allow me to talk about information that's related to exercise and not nutrition. And even though I could write for maybe the local magazine or local newspaper, I wanted to write for Runner's World and Triathlete Magazine, and all of them told me it isn't until you have the RD behind your name that you would have the credential, the right credential, to be able to be qualified to give nutrition advice. I also really wanted to do nutrition counseling and work with athletes, and I realized that part of the right way to do it was to have the RD, by law, to be legally able to give nutrition advice and to counsel and assess and diagnose. I needed to have that RD behind my name, and I also needed a lot more experience because all of my previous education was in exercise physiology, and I lacked that deep nutritional knowledge that would allow me to help people. Yeah, so I went back to school for, I think I was in school for a little over 11 years with everything, grad school, undergrad, and RD. So it was a long journey, but definitely one that I wouldn't change anything. I was happy that I did it.
And you're writing lots of magazine
and I'm
articles
writing lots now,
so
and
it has paid off.
It has paid off, yes, so I'm very happy. Sorry.
Well, I started off college as a dance major, and when I realized that I didn't have probably the means to move to a big city and work on trying to audition and things like that and support myself at the same time, I had to figure out what I was going to do. I danced for so long and obviously had interest, but an interest in nutrition. I worked at an athletic club since I was, I think, 14 years old, so I'd always been around personal trainers and different health professionals, but I didn't really think of nutrition as a career, so I actually ended up going to one of the student help areas and did the Myers-Briggs personality test.
Oh, yeah?
And
that's a good way to do it.
It was actually quite interesting because, like I said, I'd never thought about nutrition, and personality-wise, the nutrition popped up as one of the potential career opportunities, along with what my other choices were at that point in time, which was optometry, physical therapy, and psychology. Psychology I quickly ruled out, and then sort of one semester I took classes kind of related to all three. The nutrition class I took was awesome. I got it. It was interesting. The professor was amazing. I had her for multiple classes later on in my when I actually got into the nutrition program.
Passionate about it from the start.
I was. It was quite interesting. I just got it, and there were football players, for example, who took it like as an easy class, and it wasn't an easy class. There's so much to learn about nutrition. So that kind of just started the ball rolling. That was just something I felt comfortable with. I had interest in it, and I knew that I had always been interested, obviously being a dancer and the sports end and the fitness end. So it was a perfect complement to that.
Yeah. Great. When did you start and finish your RD journey?
My journey. So my first nutrition class that I took was probably in the time frame of around 1992 to 93. Once I kind of declared that as my major, I finished my coursework. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Nutrition Dietetics in 1995 and was accepted into the internship program. So immediately I worked full-time the summer between graduating and my internship, because our internship as dietitians is unpaid.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it was not a paid internship. So I did work before that, and then started my internship in the fall of '95, completed that in '96. So that was probably my whole process. Took the registration exam in '96, October of '96, and passed that. So that was officially made me a registered dietitian.
Yeah. And then how do you have to do your credentials?
To keep up with the registered
Yeah.
the RD credential, we're required to do 75 hours of continuing education every 5 years. The process has changed since I've been a dietitian.
Yeah.
Quite a long time, from the time I started to what it is now. We are required to do professional development portfolios and competencies and things like that, that we create. We do have flexibility in the areas that we want to focus on, but we do have to, as registered dietitians, all registered dietitians have to have that 75 hours of continuing education every 5 years.
Yeah.
To maintain our credential.
Yeah.
What about you,
I
Marni?
finished my master degree near the end of 2005, so in December, and then all of 2006 to 2007, the middle of 2007, I was working as a wellness coordinator and kind of dipping my toes into endurance sports, training for my first Ironman, my first marathon, and then I decided to go back to school. Sometime around 2007, it was 2008 that I officially went back to school, started with some local classes, and because I was just pursuing my verification statement, which means that I wasn't getting an actual bachelor degree, I was maybe one class short from it, but that I met all the criteria to be eligible for the internship. So I could do my accredited classes online and through distance university, and then my local classes, any of the classes that I didn't have, which I had a lot of them coming from a science background. And then I took a few months to be matched for the internship. That was a very stressful process. And then the internship was about 10 months, so about 1,200 hours, divided up into community, food service, clinical. Clinical was the longest time in the internship, and then several months to study and prepare for the exam. So in all, I think the whole process was a little under 4 years.
Marni, when you think about your internship or your work experience that you've had since becoming a dietitian, what are some things that you would say were the most challenging, maybe the most rewarding, and any funny stories that you have to share?
Yeah, well, one of the challenging situations was in my community rotation. I was working or interning at an eating disorder private practice.
Yeah.
And I say this in a very compassionate way, that it was very draining. It was tough. It was very tough to work with that type of clientele, but I learned so much, and I apply a lot of that to how I work with athletes today, especially since a lot of athletes have a lot of body image issues. But that was definitely challenging, to learn how to speak to somebody who has an eating disorder or overcoming one. A lot of the motivational interviewing. It's not a quick process, so it was very challenging. As far as a scary situation, I remember near the end of my internship and my clinical rotation, you're asked to be on your own. So the first time I didn't have another RD next to me, looking over my notes and make sure, am I doing this correctly?
Yeah, that's scary.
And so at the very end, they put me into my own, into the ICU. Well, not necessarily the ICU, but into this person just had jaw surgery, and so the jaw was shut, needed a tube feeding, had some other issues going on, and I had to write the formula for the tube feeding. I had to talk to the family members, and this was the first time on my own doing it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is very scary.
Yeah.
But it also really excited me that I could make these decisions on my own, and that actually is what kind of sparked an interest. Well, maybe I would like to do a little clinical nutrition. And then a funny story, I remember my food service, I had to do a meal for the nursing home, and I decided to do turkey burgers instead of regular burgers. And so I joked that, well, at least I didn't serve them tofu as
And
a
what
vegetarian.
area was this at?
This is in a nursing home.
In what
In
state?
in Jacksonville.
In Florida, okay.
Yeah, and they weren't very happy with the turkey burgers, so I joke, well, at least I didn't serve them tofu, but I didn't get the best reaction for my healthy turkey burgers. But I did it, and I passed that test. But you can't cater to the needs of everyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So how about you?
Well, I guess funny story. I can remember my first job as a clinical dietitian. I worked clinical for about 10, 11 months before moving into outpatient, which is where my passion was for cardiac rehab and things like that. But funny experiences in this first 10 months that I'm in clinical. I also did cardiac rehab when I was a clinical dietitian, but cardiac rehab or cardiac care as a clinical dietitian was much different than cardiac rehab, where you actually have time to talk with patients. In clinical, you're running into patients' rooms, you're in and out, you're given a quick education, and then you never see these people again unless you move jobs and they're in cardiac rehab. But I remember walking into a room for a man who just had a heart attack, and his family was there, and they had brought in fast food fried chitlins that this man who had just had a heart attack was eating, and those are like fried pig intestines basically for a man who had a heart attack. So I just remember I'm this young, early 20s dietitian going, oh my gosh, seriously? But fortunately I made it lighthearted, that's not on your nutrition plan, as we move forward, enjoy them, but so that was kind of one of those, like, it was a shock and awe, but it was kind of funny after the fact. I remember talking with the other dietitians, and they were, it was just, it is what it is. I guess rewarding is when people accomplish their goals. I have done outpatient for years, for the majority of my career, which was a lot of coaching and counseling, and whether it was a cardiac rehab patient or an eating disorder client, or someone who's managing their diabetes or high cholesterol, it's rewarding, as a dietitian, as much so, I would say, as to the client, whether it be an athlete or a patient or whatnot. When someone's lab work comes down and they come back and they're so excited that they reached that goal.
That's work too for both parties.
Right, and it's rewarding on both ends, because that person actually took the information and they were ready to change and make the changes. I've really enjoyed years later, I guess, working with kids, because kids are our future adults. If you can teach them young and kind of get them thinking in terms of nutrition and health, that seeing things and seeing them accomplish things. I worked with quite a bit of youth athletes, and from middle school to high school and high school to college and college to professional, the idea is bigger, faster, stronger. So when you can see that underweight kid that you've worked with get bigger, faster, and stronger, as part of that, and they're focusing on their nutrition where they would have never have thought of it before. Those types of things are rewarding. I don't really have one specific situation, but a lot of them because there's also on the other end, which I think is the challenging part, for me anyway, as a new dietitian, I wanted everyone to do well. I was so passionate about it and
share
so excited.
All of your information.
And I knew I was sharing, but I also wanted them to do it, But I quickly realized that until someone is ready to do it, what it may be, the change, and again, whether it be a cardiac rehab patient or an athlete or someone facing disordered eating, until they're ready to make the change, you have to realize that as a professional that you're there to offer guidance, but they've got to make that first decision and step. But I found that as early on as a challenge. I quickly learned that I couldn't take that personally, and that I was there when they were ready.
Yeah, very true. Joey, all right, let's talk money. What was your first official job, paying job as a registered dietitian?
Okay, so we know our internships were unpaid.
Yes.
So my first official job as a paid job as a dietitian was a clinical dietitian. I actually started off as a temporary because the dietitian that I replaced was moving more into food service and a project that they didn't know how long term it would be, but I was paid. So, and actually, they ended up hiring me full time. It was full time, but they did hire me permanently, and I stayed there as a clinical dietitian. And then after about 10 months, moved into outpatient cardiac rehab.
Where was this at?
In Wilmington, North Carolina.
All right.
At New Hanover Regional Medical Center.
Okay.
So then I stayed there from, I guess that was 1997 until 2002 when we moved to South Carolina.
All right. Yeah.
And what about you, Marni?
It's pretty similar. I didn't think I wanted to do clinical nutrition, and I applied for a job at Baptist Medical Center Beaches. It was a PRN, so it was as needed. So when dietitians were sick or on holiday or needed some fill-ins, which was perfect for me because I had just officially started Marni coaching and nutrition in 2012, and I was there until we moved to Greenville. So just under 3 years I did the PRN, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the clinical side. I loved that you were rushing, going from patient to patient, and every day was new and different, and you're just constantly learning and engaging with different types of people. So it worked really well with my personality, that I just never felt bored, and I really enjoyed it. And I was really happy to have that combination of clinical nutrition experience and then be able to combine it with working with athletes. It made me appreciate the human body a lot more and how bad things can be in the clinical setting, but also there's so much that goes together when you think about different diseases and the human body and the physiology. So
Marni, as a dietitian now, what
Yes.
on this day is your favorite part about being a dietitian now that you've been a dietitian for a while now?
Yeah, I love being an RD. I love having the credential because it qualifies me to provide nutrition advice, that we are the experts to go to when people have nutrition needs, and that by law we can work with individuals. I love my field of work where I just work with athletes, specifically endurance athletes in the sports of triathlon, running, cycling, swimming. I really enjoy having a specialty area because it allows me to put all of my focus into that one area, so that I don't have to spend my energy on things that I'm not passionate about or that I'm not good at. And that's part of being an RD, is knowing that there's somebody else to do what you're not good at and that I don't have to do everything. I really enjoy, you mentioned it earlier, I really enjoy helping athletes, especially the ones that I work with training for races, really understand how to eat and how to fuel and to reach their goals in a healthy way, but also with a performance mindset. So it's really neat to be able to take people through that entire journey, and it's rewarding to see them succeed. But also I know that it's not always flawless, it's not always perfect, so I think it's also fun to work through some of the obstacles that people have and those sticky moments where it's like, well, why didn't this work? And that keeps it a little interesting to be able to help somebody to really understand, okay, this didn't work, this did work, why isn't this working? And that's just, you have to be very patient, you have to have good communication, and you really need to treat the person as an individual. So I'm very fortunate that I get to work for myself. It's something I always wanted to do, is to have my own business, but I love working with endurance athletes, so I feel happy that I can focus all my energy on them.
That's great.
Yeah, how about you?
Well, I obviously, as a dietitian, I think is that the helping part. I enjoy helping people, whether it, whatever, again, it be with their goals. again, I have enjoyed working with kids. My favorite part was when I got to work with dancers, because I had done that. It was sort of my full circle career moment, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I could do something that I want, my first passion, and then take my second passion and kind of combine those together. So that was, you know, a fun part. I like to create things. I had a small consulting business when I was in Columbia, and I found that I enjoyed, actually, because I'd done so much coaching and counseling, the back end stuff of running a nutrition practice, creating, which I had to do also when I presented and worked
Mm-hmm.
with clients on a regular basis, you know, creating presentations and handouts, and, you know, all the behind the scenes stuff that you don't really think about when, you know, Marni, for example, goes and gives a nutrition talk. So you know, I knew that I enjoyed doing that as well. So sort of in that helping mode, keeping me in something that I love, the passion of working with, you know, athletes. I primarily worked with, you know, non-endurance athletes, team sports, dancers, you know, that type of thing. So it was kind of a beautiful marriage when I met Marni on the street one day, and we were like, well, I like doing, you know, a lot of this back end stuff now. I kind of needed a break. I think from the one-on-one counseling from doing it so long.
And I love the one-on-one counseling.
So it was a good combination.
Yes.
So now I get to help Marni with a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and
because you're a dietitian, you know how I'm thinking when I want to come up with a certain handout or something informative, and so it's really easy to work with somebody who is also a dietitian.
Right.
So I also think that it's great, you know, for any new dietitians to work with somebody who's already established, because you can learn so much from them and also help them out with your new knowledge as well.
Right.
Yeah. If you're passionate about nutrition, which I know many people are, I'd encourage you to look into going back to school, earning that RD credential. There's so much that you can do with it, as Joey mentioned, and it also give you such a broad educational experience and other opportunities that maybe you never knew existed. So happy RD Day to all the dietitians out there.
Yes, happy RD Day, everybody.
Yeah.